Hey everybody, this is Tony from Mutiny Studios, here to welcome you to a new series that will be about D&D character creation. For those of you that don't know, D&D stands for Dungeons & Dragons, which is a role-playing game, and it's a whole lot of fun for any of you that have never tried it. And so, what I'm going to do is for new players, this first video will be just an in-general, semi-in-depth, but kind of not really, guide for you to make characters. I'm going to go through the 5th edition player handbook, and talk about some of the different options that you have for making characters. And then in future videos, I will go more in depth about particular classes and characters and multi-classing and all that fun stuff. But I wanted to start out this D&D series with just an in general, this is how to make a character 101 video. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave your likes and comments on this video, and feel free to check out some of our other content. With all of that being said, we'll just get right into it. So before I talk about anything else, I'd like to stress that you will need the 5th edition player handbook with you while you go through this video if you do want to start making characters. You can find it on Google just by searching D&D 5e player handbook. You can buy it on Amazon or find it through any other way that you can think of. So before I get into some of the details about all this different D&D information, I do really want to stress that this video is more designed for you to hear something, pause the video, look it up, and then move on from there, because I'm not going to be getting very in-depth with my descriptions of each thing. That being said, I would like to start with step 1 of D&D character creation, which is choosing your race. Each character belongs to a race in the D&D world. The race you choose contributes to your character's identity by establishing a general appearance and the natural talents gained from culture and ancestry. Your character's race grants particular racial traits that can be very helpful when playing, and can be complemented by certain classes that you will choose later. Lastly, your race increases one or more of your ability scores, which is crucial to the success of your character. So the first race that I'm going to cover are dwarves. Dwarves are bold and hardy, and known as skilled warriors, miners, and workers of stone and metal. Sub-races of dwarves include the hill dwarf and the mountain dwarf, with differing skills than the standard dwarf. All dwarven information can be found on page 18 of the player handbook. The next race that I'm going to cover are elves, which are a magical people of otherworldly grace and shrouded in mystery. Elves can be separated into several ethnicities, but also have sub-races known as wood elves and dark elves. All information on elves starts on page 21 of the player handbook. Another race to mention are halflings. Many halflings strive to find a quiet and peaceful home that is far from dangers of the world, but some spend their lives traveling to find new people and experiences. The only sub-race of a halfling is the Lightfoot halfling, and all other information starts on page 27 of the player handbook. The most common race chosen by new players is typically humans, because they're the most adaptable and ambitious people when it comes to their varying taste, morals, customs, and class styles that they can be. All human information starts on page 29 of the player handbook. My favorite race in the D&D universe are Dragonborn. They're shaped by draconic gods, or the dragons themselves. Dragonborns originally hatched from dragon eggs as a unique race, combining the best attributes of dragons and humanoids. Dragonborn have a specific draconic ancestry that define their color and breath attack. All Dragonborn information starts on page 32 in the player handbook. The next race are gnomes. Gnomes take delight in life, enjoying every moment of invention, exploration, investigation, creation, and play. The sub-races of the gnomes are the forest gnome and the rock gnome. All gnome information starts on page 35 of the player handbook. Another commonly played race for D&D are half-elves. Walking in two worlds but never truly belonging to either, half-elves combine what some say are the best qualities of their elf and human parents. All half-elf information can be found on page 38 of the player handbook. Another race are half-orcs, which are a powerful combination of human intellect and orc fury. All half-orc information can be found on page 40 of the player handbook. The final race that I'm going to cover are tieflings. Tieflings are also fun to play as because of their demonic appearance due to an ancient sin that has permanently tainted their bloodline. All tiefling information can be found on page 42 in the player handbook. Okay, step 2 of the D&D character creation process is picking your class. Although picking a race defines your character's general demeanor, your class will determine how you and your party operate in battle. Class broadly describes your character's vocation, what special talents they possess, and the tactics that they will use throughout each session. Your character receives a number of benefits from your choice of class. These benefits include class features, which are abilities that set you apart from other characters, and proficiencies in different weapons and armors. So the first class that I'm going to cover are barbarians. To a barbarian, civilization is no virtue, but a sin of weakness. Barbarians come alive in the chaos of combat, and they can enter a berserk state where rage takes over, giving them superhuman strength and resilience. All barbarian information can be found on page 46 of the Player Handbook. The next class are bards. In the D&D universe, words and music are not just vibrations of air, but vocalizations with power all their own. The bard is a master of song, speech, and the magic they contain. All bard information can be found on page 51 of the Player Handbook. Another class that I think is pretty fun to play as is a cleric. Clerics are conduits for the divine magic of the gods, manifesting it as miraculous effects. Clerics combine the helpful magic of healing and inspiring their allies with spells that harm and hinder foes. All cleric information starts on page 56 of the Player Handbook. A favorite class by many, druids revere nature above all else, gaining their spells and other magical powers either from the force of nature itself or from a nature deity. Druid spells are oriented towards nature and animals, the power of tooth and claw, of sun and moon, of fire and storm. All druid information can be found on page 64 of the Player Handbook. Probably the easiest class to start with if you're new to D&D is a fighter. Fighters learn the basics of all combat styles, but specialize in a certain style of combat. All their information starts on page 70 of the Player Handbook. The next class are monks. Monks make careful study of a magical energy known as Kai. This energy is an element that flows through living bodies, and monks harness this power within themselves to create magical effects that exceed their body's physical capabilities. All monk information can be found on page 76 of the Player Handbook. The next class I'm going to talk about are paladins. Paladins train for years to learn the skills of combat, but those skills are secondary to their magical power to heal and smite the undead to protect the innocent. All paladin information can be found on page 82 of the Player Handbook. Another fun class to play as is a ranger. Rangers are warriors of the wilderness and specialize in hunting the monsters that threaten the edges of civilization. They can also use spells to improve their hunting abilities. All ranger information can be found on page 89 of the Player Handbook. The next class I want to talk about are rogues. Many rogues focus on stealth and deception in their interactions and in combat, to utilize their cunning over brute force. All rogue information can be found on page 94 of the Player Handbook. For the rest of the characters that I'm going to talk about, they are all primarily magic users, and so I just wanted to take a little step back and kind of talk about magic in general for a sec. Magic is incredibly useful in D&D. That being said, it is far too extensive for me to cover in this video, so all magic and spellcasting information starts on page 201 of the Player Handbook. If you have a magic-based character, I will have future videos demonstrating how to use them, but you'll have to look in the Player Handbook and see what spells are best for you. The first magic character is a sorcerer. Some sorcerers wield magic that springs from an ancient bloodline infused with the magic of dragons, while others carry raw, uncontrolled magic within them. All sorcerer information can be found on page 99 of the Player Handbook. The next character is known as a warlock. Warlocks are defined by a pact with an otherworldly being. This pact is similar to the bond between a paladin and their deity, which gives them magic and their combat skills. All information on warlocks can be found on page 105 of the Player Handbook. The last class that I can cover are wizards. Wizards live and die by their spells. Their quest for arcane knowledge sends them across the globe in search of ancient texts and creatures that can teach them lost magical knowledge. All wizard information can be found on page 112 of the Player Handbook. Okay, another part of classes that I wanted to talk about separately is hit die. Each class has its own hit die, and your hit die represent how much health your character has before they die in battle. The class descriptions will have your hit die listed, but with each level you will roll your hit die to increase your overall health. At level 1, you will get the highest possible number on your class's hit die plus your constitution modifier, which I will discuss later in the video. Okay, step 3 in our D&D character creation guide will be determining your ability scores. Your character's ability score will determine their effectiveness in the D&D world. Although each class has abilities that are more important than others, some of these abilities are crucial for every player. The abilities include Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. A character well balanced in each of these abilities can sometimes be the hero that saves the quest, while other characters lacking in certain areas can set off a trap that kills everyone. Now I'll get a little more in depth about each ability. Strength measures the natural athleticism and bodily power of your character, and it is important for barbarians, fighters, and paladins. Dexterity measures physical agility, reflexes, balance, and poise, which is most important for monks, rangers, and rogues. Constitution measures your health, stamina, and vital force. Every character should have this be a second or third tier priority for them. Intelligence measures your mental acuity, information recall, and analytical skill, which is important for the wizards. Wisdom measures awareness, intuition, and insight, which is important for clerics and druids. Lastly is charisma, which measures confidence, eloquence, and leadership, which is crucial for bards, sorcerers, and warlocks. So because calculating your ability score modifiers is a little tricky, I just have this slide up and I'm going to let you just pause the video now and do everything that is said on the slide, and then you can keep going with the video. Okay, so the fourth step of the character creation process is describing your character. Once you know the basic game aspects of your character, you can turn them into a living and breathing person. You can pick their name, their background, their alignment, which is their moral compass and how they will make their decisions, personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. All this information starts on page 121 of the player handbook. Each of those categories can be very important for immersing yourself in the new persona that you've created for your character and separating yourself from the game. One category that I'm going to talk about in particular is your background. The background that you choose for your character will reveal where they came from, what equipment your character will have, what they're proficient in, and other personality traits. Each background will have lists of traits that you can roll to randomize your character, and those start on page 127 of the player handbook. Okay, so one of your final steps of your D&D character creation guide is choosing your equipment. Your class and background determine your character's starting equipment. This equipment includes weapons, armor, and other adventuring gear. Equipment information can be found from pages 143 to 155 of the player handbook. A couple elements of your equipment that are important and I'm going to touch on now are your armor class and then the modifiers that you will use depending on the weapon that you choose. Your armor class, or AC, represents how well your character avoids being wounded in battle. AC is calculated by adding your armor's AC, which will be listed on the page, your shield's AC, and your dexterity modifier. If you're not wearing any armor, you'll just have a base of 10 plus your dexterity modifier. Each weapon that you choose has its own modifier and damage that can be determined when hitting an enemy. Your strength modifier will be used for attacks with melee weapons, and your dexterity modifier will be used for attacks with ranged weapons. Okay, so the final and most important element of your character creation is getting to use them. If you have a character sheet in front of you and you went through this guide step by step, you should now have a character that is ready to play. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of watching my video. I really enjoy talking about D&D stuff. I'm a big D&D nerd, and so it's really exciting to get to talk about everything and to start this new series where I'll be going into some of the more in-depth character creations and just quick character layouts for you all to use in the future. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And comment below if there are any particular character sheets or things like that you want me to talk about or show you how to do in a future video. That'll be it for this video, and so I'll see you next time for another D&D character creation. Happy questing!